the eternal Son, who became incarnate and now shares himself with us, with me, a poor sinner. In these most intimate ways, we converse deep in our hearts with the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself up for me. So this is not something very, very important. That period of silence. All it can be a period of thanksgiving when there is a hymn. Okay? We know and then we participate, we join in. So it depends on what we do at that period after receiving communion. If there is a period of silence, then we all do that. If there is music going on and we know the song, we worship as one community, so we participate in the hymn. Okay? But silence is so vital in that moment because we have received God and we're internalizing Him. So it is a gross abuse by some priests who are not few in number, who immediately after receiving communion, some people haven't even got back into the pews and they jump onto the pulpit to start announcements. This is like you take away from the most sacred moment a person can ever have, just received God, and there's not even a minute of internalizing the reality. And now we are hearing announcements. So now, okay? And so Mass is, the rite of Mass ends with the prayer of thanksgiving, the concluding prayer. And the church is very specific in her rites that there should be no speeches or announcements put there, rather given or done before the concluding prayer of Mass. If there are any announcements, they should be done after, not before. However short that period of thanksgiving is, it must be there. And people should be led to internalize the mystery. In the early church, in many areas, this part of Mass, after receiving communion, was the longest part of Mass, when people did a lot of thanksgiving at this time. That's part of the reason why the entire rite of Mass came to be called Eucharistia, Eucharist Thanksgiving. Because Thanksgiving was the longest part of the rite. Okay? Today I think it's the shortest, if it is there at all. Okay? So that's why, again, as we said before, that's why oftentimes we lack the right disposition. Because there's no time to really well dispose ourselves, to reflect, to meditate, to give thanks for the mystery we have received. The devil finds different ways of distracting us. We've just received in Jesus, okay, now hear the announcements about whatever. Okay? So, it is very annoying, extremely annoying that priests do that. We said, okay, the sacrament is valid, but now you're taking away the entire experience of right disposition, of drawing value from the mystery I have received. So, okay. So, after the concluding prayer, we are sent into the world. The church is sent into the world the same way the Son was sent. So, the sending implies a self-emptying. That sending, again, is so important in that one of the names of the Eucharist is sending. Missa est. Missio, you are sent. Okay? So it's very important. You have received, you have internalized, you have known, grown in wisdom, knowledge, understanding, now go spread. That's why the rite has to unfold it in such a way that the Christian people draw from it, that their faith is fed, their hope is nourished, and their love is sustained and fed. So if we are not growing in faith, hope, and love through the Eucharist, by way of the Eucharist, then we are not benefiting anything. Because it's food that is intended to grow and unfold our baptismal grace. namely faith, hope, and love, that they may bear fruit. So, the sending implies self-emptying, to give. Through communion in the body and blood of Christ, the whole church and each member become for the world what Christ is for the world. Life-giving Spirit. And the church becomes this in the same pattern whereby Christ and the Spirit are this, namely a complete self-emptying. No one has greater love than this, okay? So to lay down one's life for one's friends. And only love is credible to the world that does not yet believe. So this is something very significant. The Father Jeremy says this in his book, What Happens at Mass, page 130. Love is credible. Pope Benedict, in his book, The Spirit of the Liturgy, makes it clear that the only relevance we bring to the world is truth. Because this love is truth. If the church no longer gives truth to society, the church becomes completely irrelevant. Now, secular society will tell us that, well, you are irrelevant, we don't like your truth. But they are lying. Because if our truth were irrelevant, they would leave us alone. They would ignore us. But they don't. They don't ignore us. Why? Because they know that this is a thorn in their flesh. They know it is true. And so to abate their consciences, they want to demean it, to belittle it, so that we get discouraged and become like them. And so when we cease to give truth to society, we become irrelevant to society. Our relevance is truth and love. If we cease to do that, we are irrelevant. So we should always keep that in mind. So with faith in your love and mercy, I eat your body and drink your blood. By your holy body and blood, free me from all my sins and from every evil. Keep me faithful to your teaching and never let me be parted from you. Okay? So, this prayer is said by a priest before communion. So there is something very important in the Byzantine Rite. The Byzantine Rite is the Catholic rite of some Eastern churches. Okay? It's Catholic. It's not Greek Orthodox. It's Catholic. The Byzantine Rite is Catholic, not Greek Orthodox. Okay? So this is something very important. You can do it privately or whatever. That is beautiful. So in the Byzantine Rite, which is Catholic, they have this wonderful communion prayer, which can assist us to understand what each one of us should be doing when we approach to receive Holy Communion. So you can print this prayer in a small piece of paper, okay? It is very good. It helps us to dispose ourselves to the mystery we are about to receive. So let's pray it together slowly. Okay? Oh Lord, I believe and profess that you are Jesus Christ, the Son of the living God, who came into the world to save sinners, of whom I am the first. Accept me as a partaker of your mystical sufferings, O Son of God, for I have not revealed your mysteries to your enemies, nor will I give your gifts as to Judas. But like the thief I address to you. Remember me, O Lord, when you shall come into your kingdom. Remember me, O Master, when you shall come into your kingdom. Remember me, O Holy One, when you shall come into your kingdom. May the partaking of your holy mysteries, O Lord, be not for my judgment or condemnation, but for the healing of soul and body. O Lord, I also believe and profess that this which I am about to receive is truly your most precious body and your life-giving blood, which
have mercy on me. O Lord, forgive me, for I have sinned without honors.
Okay. So the prayer after communion, thanksgiving prayer, concludes this part. There should not be any interjection of announcements in the rite of Mass before the concluding prayer. Okay, so now this prayer from the Byzantine Rite, now it's only a priest says just one. This is what a priest in our rite, Roman Rite, we say before receiving Holy Communion. Okay? May the partaking of your body and blood, or the mysteries, O Lord, be not for my judgment or condemnation, but for healing of body and soul. The priest says that quietly before receiving communion. But the Byzantines have this entire prayer for the entire assembly. It's a very beautiful prayer. It helps for proper disposition, the right way to approach the mystery. Okay? So, and now. It is finished. Go on. The Eucharist is never finished. Okay? Why is the Eucharist never finished? Why is it so fast? For one simple reason. So think about that, okay? It is the source of our life and activity. So the life of the church has the Eucharist as its source. The activity, the mission of the church, everything we do that has salvific value comes from the Eucharist. It has the Eucharist as its source. So basically, to be church is to be Eucharistic. That's why the Eucharist is so vast. Okay? It's a study of a lifetime, and even then, we can't exhaust it. So we can just do the Eucharist like for 10 years, okay? Non-stop. Okay? So that's why it is. But also, it's not only the source, but also the goal or summit. That's what I can just say. Of the active life and activity of the church. So it is the source and the goal of everything that pertains to the salvation of the world. So that's why we study it over and over again, and that's why there must be due reverence when we approach it. Because if we approach it right, we receive life, and not merely life, eternal life, and we are alive in the Spirit. We bear the fruits of the Spirit. We are giving life, we are giving fruit, we are giving everything. Because we...
So like on the discussion of the Eucharist, you know, people proclaim
when that they say that people who say that we partake of the Eucharist, we say it's cannibalism. What is cannibalism?
So you're admitting.
Yeah, they're very much mistaken. Okay? Because when Jesus Christ comes, He tells us really seriously that we are going to eat His flesh and drink His blood. But what is His flesh and His blood? His flesh and the blood is life eternal. Okay? Our bodily, whatever is not eternal life, it's meat for the flesh. Okay? To quench natural hunger. That's not what we are doing with the Eucharist. When we partake of His body and blood. So in the form He gave it to us, in the sacramental form of His body and blood, okay, that is the form in which He gives us life eternal. And we are not basically eating to quench national hunger as he multiplied the loaves and people ate to their satisfaction. That was a sign of the food that is himself, his very life, is going to give us life. So, if it were cannibalism, you would be eating that person who says, no, we are not consecrate you now, we may eat you. Okay? Okay, so now we are going to look at this document, okay? Redemption Sacramentum. It is a very, very important document, okay, in understanding the Eucharist and to be well disposed when we approach this mystery. So this document is so important. It comes from the Congregation for Divine Worship and the Discipline of the Sacraments. So it is an official document which binds the church worldwide. That's why you notice that in these general instructions of the Roman Missal of the Catholic Conference of Bishops here in the US, many of the footnotes in here come from this document. So it is very, very important to study this document, okay, to understand basically the value, the importance of Eucharistic celebration, and to avoid the abuses which prevent us from receiving life and nourishment from the Eucharist. Because if we are not properly disposed, then we are going to draw little from the mystery. Okay, so we begin.
Do you want to ask? Do you have a copy for us?
No. Oh, thank you, David. David made copies for us. Serious. Okay. Thank you, David. I didn't see that. Anyone? Go around. Everybody else has it? Yours is done. You used it. So we begin with Article 1. In the Most Holy Eucharist, Mother Church, with steadfast faith, acknowledges the sacrament of redemption. That's the meaning of Redemptionis Sacramentum, the sacrament of redemption. Joyfully takes it to herself, celebrates it, and reveres it in adoration. Here we are not talking about respect. It is reverently to revere. Okay? So, in adoration, proclaiming the death of Christ Jesus and confessing his resurrection until he comes in glory. To hand over as unconquered Lord and ruler, eternal priest and a king of the universe, a kingdom of truth and life, to the immense majesty of the Almighty Father. That's from the preface of Corpus Christi. Okay? No, not Corpus Christi, Christ the King. Yes, Christ the King. The King of the universe, the King of all creation. The day we celebrate Christ the King Day, that's the preface. So, you in your free time, look at all those footnotes, okay? You have them in the back. So the Church's doctrine regarding the most holy Eucharist, in which the whole spiritual wealth of the Church is contained. Now, I want us to, we'll be going slowly, going through some of these paragraphs again, because of their doctrinal nature. So look at that. The Church's doctrine. Doctrine means a teaching, docere, okay, from Latin. Okay? The Church's doctrine regarding the most holy Eucharist, in which the whole spiritual wealth of the Church is contained, namely Christ. So the whole wealth, spiritual wealth of the church is contained in the Eucharist. Why? The whole spiritual wealth. Why? Because it is the body and the blood, soul and divinity. So all reality is right here. The wealth, whole spiritual wealth of the church is contained, namely Christ, our Paschal Lamb, the Eucharist, which is the source and the summit of the whole of Christian life, what in Vatican II, and which lies as a causative force behind the very origins of the church, meaning that the church, rather the Eucharist caused the church. Without the Eucharist, you don't have church. Okay? The origin of the church has been expounded with thoughtful care and with great authority over the course of the centuries in the writings of the councils and the supreme pontiffs, meaning popes. Okay? Most recently, in fact, the supreme pontiff, John Paul II, in the encyclical letter Ecclesia de Eucharistia, set forth afresh certain elements of great importance on this subject in view of the ecclesial circumstances of our time. So in order that, especially in the celebration of the sacred liturgy, the church might duly safeguard so great a mystery in our own time as well, the Supreme Pontiff has mandated that this congregation for divine worship and the discipline of the sacraments, in collaboration with the congregation for the doctrine of the faith, should prepare this instruction treating of certain matters pertaining to the discipline of the sacraments, or rather the sacrament of the Eucharist. Those things found in this instruction are therefore to be read in the continuity with the above mentioned encyclical letter, Ecclesia de Eucharistia. Pope Paul, John Paul II wrote that encyclical, so you can get it on the Vatican website. Okay? It is not at all the intention here to prepare a compendium of the norms regarding the Most Holy Eucharist, but rather to take up within this instruction some elements of liturgical norms that have been previously expounded, all laid down and even today remain in force, in order to assure a deeper appreciation of the liturgical norms, to establish certain norms by which those earlier ones are explained and complemented, and also set forth for bishops as well as for priests, deacons, and all the lay Christian faithful, how each should carry them out in accordance with his own responsibilities and the means at his disposal. So these documents are not simply produced for bishops and priests, but for all of us, because they enhance our knowledge of the faith and our proper approach, okay, as we come to the mysteries of our salvation. So, the norms contained in this present instruction are to be understood as pertaining to liturgical matters in the Roman Rite, and mutatis mundatiis in the other rites of the Latin Church that are duly acknowledged by law. Certainly, the liturgical reform inaugurated by the Council, meaning Vatican II, has greatly contributed to the more conscious, active, and a fruitful participation in the holy sacrifice of the altar on the part of the faithful. Even so, shadows are not lacking. In this regard, it is not possible to be silent about the abuses, even quite grave ones, against the nature of the liturgy and the sacraments as well as the tradition and the authority of the church. And mostly the abusers are priests. Okay? The authority of the church, which in our day not infrequently plague liturgical celebrations in one ecclesial environment or another. In some places, the perpetration of liturgical abuses has become almost habitual, a fact which obviously cannot be allowed and must cease. So these abuses, again, basically just violating rights and norms, in some places has become the order of the day. In some churches, for years, priests have been there like a pastor for 15, 20, 30 years, just doing their own thing, in total disregard for what the church teaches. So I'm doing my own thing, interjecting things in the Eucharistic prayer, changing them, whatever. So people don't really know where they are. There's no formation. Remember that in the rite of Mass, but in all the sacraments, especially Mass, every word, every gesture communicates the faith. And there is careful study that is put into it. So the church doesn't wake up one day and says, oh, this looks nice, let us interject it, put it in the liturgy. No, there must be an expression, a communication of what we believe. Why? Because the liturgical celebrations are the practical living manifestation of our faith. So show me how you live your faith, and I'll tell you, come and see our liturgies. So if we abuse the liturgy, we obscure the mystery of our faith. That's why the church is very serious, especially in this document, to address those abuses. Okay, the observance of the norms published by the authority of the church, the observance of the norms published by the authority of the church requires conformity of thought and word and of word. Conformity of thought and of word. Meaning what? Meaning believing. It's not simply, oh well, we have to obey. And we'll simply do it externally simply because the church says so. But internally resisting to understand the value of what the church communicates to us. So, the observance of the norms published by the authority of the church requires authority of the church, not my priest over there, my priest over there. No priest whatsoever has any authority to change rites at Mass or any other sacrament. Because the priest is not an appointee, rather an authority who basically makes these rites. As we said before, a rite is an approved practice in the administration of sacrifice. So, a priest is not an approving authority regarding the rites of the church. A priest simply obeys what he is given. Okay? So the approving authorities are the Pope and the bishops. Bishops meaning conferences of bishops, or even a diocesan bishop can, for purposes of the church, whatever, he can basically direct a norm which does not contradict universal law, but in this case let's say that, okay, at this particular time this is what we will do. But no priest whatsoever has any authority to basically approve of any rite by himself. But they will. In utter obedience, okay? Or disobedience to. Okay? So it requires conformity of thought and of word, of external action, and of the application of the heart. A merely external observance of norms would obviously be contrary to the nature of the sacred liturgy in which Christ himself wishes to gather his church, so that together with himself she will be one body and one spirit in obedience. Okay? So, for this reason, external action must be illuminated by faith and charity, which unite us with Christ and with one another, and engender love for the poor and the abandoned. Why is this always important? Whenever we talk about the Eucharist, you see the poor and the abandoned. In the Old Testament, the widow and the orphan, the unaware of God, the poor, the differentiates, the alien. Why is that always there? Remember, St. Paul went to consult with the apostles in Jerusalem, okay, to see whether what he was teaching was the right teaching. And they looked at everything, they discussed it, and they said, "You're fine." And they gave him one instruction: go take care of the poor. And St. Paul said, that I was already doing. Because you can't live the gospel and not do that, because that is the gospel. This has to be taken very seriously. That is the gospel. Why is that important? We said this before. Jesus Christ, being a good judge, merciful one, he tells us how we will do it. He tells us how we will be judged. What should be the goal of our praying the rosary? What should be the goal of our novena prayers? What should be the goal of our devotional, whatever devotional practice? Above all, what should be the goal of our sacramental celebrations? Above all, what should be the goal of our Eucharistic celebrations? Our participation in the liturgy of Christ and his church. We being that church. What should be the goal? The goal is to be like God, God who is. That is the goal of everything. That is the goal of everything. So if you pray 20 novenas a day, if you can, fine. Okay? But we have to remember this, okay? That the devil is also very shrewd and use our zeal for God to lead us into sin. Okay? So sometimes some people take on too much. They can say every day I have to say this novena, this novena. Not that the novenas are bad. As we said before, that's how our people pray. Okay? And so it is God's providential love, okay, that He gives them that spirit of prayer. We don't criticize people because they are praying novenas, they're doing whatever. That's how the Christian people pray. And it's those novenas and rosaries and whatever that have produced the saints all through generations. You know, people, if people get to know about the divine office of the church, fine, okay? They can pray that because it's very important. But most of our people, that's the way they pray rosaries and novenas and everything. So they are very, very important. But you have to be very careful not to take on too much. Why? Because the devil may make me think that I need to pray this novena, that novena. So I take on too much, okay? 10 novenas, each has its promises. 1 novenas. And so I don't miss on this, I read disappointing God, I said I will do this. Then you get so frustrated because you can't do it all, but the devil keeps telling you, take on more, take on more. Because he knows what he's doing. What he's doing is that he's trying to discourage you from praying. And you're taking on too much, by doing so, he's making your prayer life so difficult. That you have no time to do all these novenas, all this and whatever. And in the end, just to throw everything away now, that you can't do this. Okay? So we have to be very careful, okay? Not to take on too much, but to make sure that our prayers are well regulated. That doesn't mean, the priest said we shouldn't take on too much, so I'll just pray grace before a meal. That's enough. Because that's what some people do. You ask them, do you pray? Yes. How do you pray? They say grace before me. That's prayer. Do you talk to your wife? Yes, I do. How often? I say hi to her in the morning. Hi. I'm done for the day. So, Matthew 25, 21, 46. All those things we do, our going to Mass, some of us every day, our going to Mass every Sunday, it will culminate in this. Okay? When I die, the last judgment, I was hungry and I was thirsty and I was ill. I was a stranger. No. You welcome. I was a stranger. And you did what? Because I was a stranger and you kicked me out of the house, you crossed the border illegally. We have to take this seriously. In the Old Testament, okay, the alien, taking care of the alien among you, God will tell them. Jesus reaffirms that because he's the one speaking in the Old Testament as well. He reaffirms that. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. Naked. Now some priests wanting to make people laugh. It was so okay, so you see that everything we do will boil down to that. It boils down into love. Because that's how we will be judged. Just going to church and praying and looking holy and doing whatever will not save me if that prayer doesn't translate into activity. It doesn't become life. Because it can only become life if it is love. Because this life is love. That's why it keeps coming up everywhere. Okay, love of the poor, love of the poor, love of the poor. And we must take it seriously because if we don't do it, we are wasting time. Valuable time. Valuable Christian salvific time. If we don't do it. Okay? So that's why it keeps coming up. So for this reason, external action must be illuminated by faith and charity, which unites us with Christ and with one another, and engender love for the poor and the abandoned. Now, some people, especially in the West, especially in this country, they have more sympathy for abandoned animals than abandoned human beings. That I will never understand because I refuse to understand. Not that we shouldn't take care of God's creation. Okay? We have that obligation to be good caretakers of God's creation, and animals are part of that creation. Trees, whatever, are part of that. But no creature should take precedence over human life. No other creature. So we can't give affective love to animals and not to fellow humans. And unfortunately,
Father, just a side note, you know, I think it was last week I was listening to the radio station, the Catholic radio station.
Is that relevant there?
Yeah.
Relevant?
Yeah, 970 AM. And they had somebody had come on there. It's been a little while ago and I don't remember the details of it, but what I do remember is that there was some state that actually passed law that gave human rights to a lake. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah, because whoever did that is stupid. Because a lake is not human. So how can you give it human rights? Unless you are stupid.
No, I agree 100%.
How can you give human rights to something that is not human? But that's where we are today. Okay? We become totally stupid.
Yet a baby in the womb doesn't have a right.
Yeah,
The lake has human rights. As someone sometimes put it, I can't remember who said this, okay? Exactly, but someone said that God put limits on our intelligence, but none whatsoever on our stupidity. How can people, and of course, doing that, if you're talking about a state giving human rights on people, there had to be legislators involved, who are learned friends, have laws and degree, okay?
Law, yeah.
They have degrees in law and whatever, so they have their credentials, okay? Only to splendidly display stupidity. A splendid display of stupidity. Now, one can understand probably what they were trying to do, to preserve a lake. And that is very significant and important. But to preserve a lake, you don't have to give it human rights. Because it can't receive human rights. Okay, what does a lake do with human rights? Vote?
You can care less.
What is it to do with human rights? All those things make me laugh. So, abandoned. Again, as I said, we have to take care of human beings, but there are so many human beings that are suffering. They have to. But then you see these commercials about dogs, you know, abandoned dogs, and the dogs look so sorry. You know? Sometimes you wonder whether they are real dogs or computer-generated, you know, images. So, but that's important. We have to take care of creation, but creation, the rest of creation cannot be given affective love to exalt them over and above human beings.
Sorry, Father. Can you just real quick remind me again what effective love, what you mean by that as opposed to?
Okay, affective love, affective affection. Affective love is the love. The best way we understand it is Genesis 2, Genesis chapter 2. Adam was fashioned from the clay of the earth, and God breathed into him the ruach, the breath of life, and he became a living being. And then God gave him everything. Animals, plants, and everything. He gave each its name. But there was nothing that would give him happiness. Why? Because those other creatures are not made in the image and likeness of God. Meaning, they don't share in the very life of God, which is goodness and love. Okay? So, because we have a rational soul endowed with intellect and will, we actually receive God as wisdom, intellect, wisdom, truth, and we receive God as goodness, love, the will. Okay? And it's only a fellow human who can receive that and reciprocate it. That is the meaning of affective love. Okay. So affective love encompasses the entirety of our nature, a human being, intellect, will, and all the emotions we call the passions. Okay. So that is affective love.
So it's basically
different.
love in its fullest sense, yeah.
Pardon?
So it's basically, excuse me, love in its fullest sense.
Yes. So when we say I love animals, we're using the word love in a secondary sense. Yes. But not in the sense of affective love. So if we give things affective love, there is a man lost a family, because he had 4 cars, he was a rich man, he had 4 cars, you know, these are whatever, sport, whatever, those expensive cars. He would go to work. When he came back home, what he did was to give affective love to his cars. He would just polish his cars and the tires, everything, whatever. He completely ignored his wife. So the wife said, he is married to his cars, I have no business being here. That's what happens when we give. And of course, those cars will not reciprocate that love. You can tell this phone, what is the latest phone? The iPhone what? XR. Or the Samsung? 10, okay? I love this phone. Look at me, I love this phone. I love you. The phone will never say I love you back. You can Siri. But
there is no emotion.
it's not actually Siri, it's not a real human being saying I love you. Okay? Who has an iPhone? Okay, it says to Siri, I love you.
Oh my God.
I love you.
I wish I could help.
I wish I could help. Okay, so that is affective love. Now, sometimes the reason that in our fallen condition it's difficult to give affective love to others is because of our sinfulness. Okay? Think about it. That's what Jesus said in Matthew 5, 6, 7, especially in 5. Love of your loving enemies, love of enemies. People, who has a dog? You have one? How long have you had your dog? 7 years. Have you ever gotten into an argument with your dog? Okay, so we do this out of frustration. But if logically you enter an argument with the dog, I told you that people will think you're crazy. The dog will just be scared and go like, you don't know what you're saying. Okay? So oftentimes we tend to love those animals sometimes more than we love people, because animals will always do what we tell them. They will just we will just drag and take them where we want to. They're not going to say
You haven't met my dog yet.
But you know, a human being, like a kid, you tell them this age, okay, because they say, no! So, an adult, okay? You have either a traditional husband or wife, you tell them to do things, you're raising another big baby, so that becomes difficult to, you know? So that's why sometimes